At the same time, the whole band was being pulled apart. The biggest problem was Peter, who was by this point becoming unhealthy, in part because of the chemicals, and certainly because he wasn't allowed to play drums. We had always been able to placate him before, but this time, under even more pressure, he became harder to control. We hadn't been away very long, only a year really, and fans had gotten plenty of music in that stretch. Alive 2, double platinum, and all 4 solo albums, all of them selling platinum. But the record label was accustomed to having 2 Kiss records each and every year because of the blistering pace that we had set through the mid-1970s. As we got ready to finish Dynasty, Bill Aucoin alerted us to the idea of a Return of Kiss campaign and told us that we were going in for a cover shoot with Scavullo, the big fashion photographer. He put us in straitjackets. We got the photos done, and they looked great. A few days later, we did a video session for a series of television commercials keyed to the same theme. That session went less smoothly. The director insisted on take after take, and the day was getting longer. Peter was especially unhappy with the way it was going, so he ran into the bathroom and started to complain. Bill Aucoin tried to calm Peter down. Peter then got so upset, either with himself or with the way things were going, and I assume that the chemicals in his system had something to do with it, that he took his fist and smashed it into a glass case so hard that a shard went right through his hand. He had to be taken to a hospital and stitched up. Now there was a question whether there was even going to be a tour, whether Peter's damaged tendons would allow him to use his right hand at all. We were horrified. Our initial thought right away was for Peter's safety, because we lived with him and cared about him, no matter the consistent torture he put us through. But afterward, when the shock of the accident wore off, Paul and I got angry. "Oh my God," we would say, "what an idiot." Can you imagine being so upset at anything that you drive your fist through a glass case? The whole James Dean lifestyle had never appealed to me, because after that guy dies in a car crash, I'm going to sleep with his girlfriend. It was 1980, time for another album. Once we started working on Unmasked, it became clear that Peter's chemical problems had become major and that he needed some serious help. But he couldn't get that help within the context of the band. There was too much temptation, too many distractions, and he was causing all of us too much stress. We had a discussion with Vinnie Poncia, and he said, "Look, I don't want to use Peter on Unmasked. I want to use Anton Fig." Anton, who later became the drummer for David Letterman's late night band, was a friend of Ace's, and he had appeared on Ace's solo album. He was also in a band called Spider that was managed by Bill Aucoin. Using Anton instead of Peter played into Ace's hands because it made him feel more in control. This was a kind of balancing act that Paul and I were used to. One year making Peter feel better about himself, the next year doing the same thing for Ace. The decision to use a different drummer on the album was just the first step in dealing with Peter. We honestly weren't sure what to do with him. He had been with the band since we started, and Kiss was an extremely loyal organization. Toward the end of the recording sessions, Poncia asked him to come in and add some harmonies on selected songs. They didn't go very well either. After the album came out, we were getting ready to go out on tour, and Bill Aucoin came by to talk. "Look," he said, "you guys have a tour to do. I don't want to get another drummer. Give Peter another chance." Peter had talked with Bill and Ace, and they agreed that he needed another chance. He wanted to come in and show how different he was. So we set up a meeting at SIR Rehearsal Studios in New York, and at the appointed time Peter appeared carrying a music stand, the kind that symphony orchestra players have, with a clip for the sheet music. He looked very serious and intense. Peter couldn't read or write music, not then and not now. None of us could. We were a self-taught rock band. But by that time he was so delusional that he thought if he had a music stand, he could convince us that he had changed. I'm surprised he didn't bring a baton. "You guys," he said, I've completely changed my life around. I've been studying drums and music for the past 6 months, and I can read music. I'm completely better." I looked at the music sheets incredulously, and then at him. "Can you read and write music, Peter?" "Sure," he said, then mumbled something, but I couldn't make head or tail of it. Then we started playing, and he was worse than ever. So we had a meeting afterwards, and we said, "Peter is unhealthy. He's going to kill himself. He's got to leave the band and get some help." So after much deliberation, everybody, including Ace, voted him out of the band.
Peter was completely unmanageable. Whatever we did was never right. If we let him sleep late on a day off, he would get angry and say he wanted to travel on the off day. If we traveled on an off day, he would say he wanted to sleep. If he said it was too hot backstage, we turned up the air conditioning. Then he complained it was too cold. One time he punched a mirror and got a serious deep cut on his hand that needed microsurgery and stitches. It wasn't unusual for Peter to throw his drumsticks at me or Gene or Ace if we stepped in front of his drum riser. Never mind that he was up on a drum riser, meaning we didn't block the audience's view of Peter even if we did pass in front of his kit. If he wants to be at the front of the stage, he should learn to play the damn guitar. But then one night, near the end of the tour, in December 1979, Peter had been binging on drugs and playing particularly erratically. When I turned around during one song and let him know his tempo was too frantic, his reaction was to start slowing songs down and then speeding them up again, apparently out of spite. That crossed the line. It's one thing to sabotage things offstage, and God knows he'd done plenty of that, but this was different. This was in front of fans, people who had paid to see us. Immediately after the show, Gene, Ace, and I spoke about it. We were all stunned by the betrayal. The unspoken rule had always been that you left your shit in the dressing room. No matter what was going on, when we went on stage, we were a band. The stage was sacred. Peter's purposeful sabotaging of the show was the ultimate treachery. We decided we wanted Peter gone. Ace can say whatever he wants now, but he voted to fire Peter without any prodding or strong-arming. It's a tribute to Ace that he did. As far as my own vote, I didn't think it was cold or calculated to dump Peter. It was just survival. Was I going to let his problems drag down the entire band, and me with it? No way. Gene felt the same way. We called Bill and told him we had to get rid of Peter. We said we wanted to cancel the rest of the shows and go home. How could we go on? Bill smoothed things over enough to get us to delay taking action and continue the tour rather than fire Peter immediately. We had just a few dates left. Peter didn't see the train that was about to hit him, but that was par for the course. Immediately after the end of the tour in mid-December 1979, Peter married his second wife, Deborah Jensen, a Playboy playmate. The situation was weird. I couldn't help but wonder, would she marry him if she realized she was marrying the former drummer of Kiss? Early in 1980, Bill had to break the news to Peter that he was out. But instead, Bill persuaded the other three of us that we should give Peter a second chance. So we didn't finalize a decision, and after a few months, a period when we were off the road anyway, recording Unmasked with Anton Fig on drums again and Vinny producing, we agreed to have Peter come back and try playing with us. In the interim, Bill had arranged for Peter to take drum lessons from Jim Chapin, a famous jazz drummer. The day of the audition, or rehearsal, or whatever you wanted to call it, Peter walked in carrying a music stand and sheet music. The first thing he said was, "I'll have to have all your songs on sheet music because I read music now." I whispered to Gene, "Are we on candid camera?" Peter sat down, put his sheet music on the stand, and studied it for a while. Mind you, this was a rehearsal of old material, not the new stuff we had written and recorded for Unmasked. We wanted to see whether he could even play the songs he already knew. The rehearsal did not go well. It was over. My philosophy had always been that if somebody was drowning, you tried to save the person. But when they started to pull you under, you cut them loose. That's what was happening. All the talking and advice and trying to get him help got us nowhere. We shot a video for the song Shandy after the decision to let Peter go had been confirmed. He came to the video shoot knowing it was the last time he would appear with Kiss. At the end of the day, he took his makeup case with him and left. It wasn't tearful, but it was a big moment. Peter was leaving. We had fired him, and this was the last time we were going to see him in the band. Oddly enough, Peter didn't seem to care. He was likely in his own drug haze and saw this as his big opportunity. In his mind, he wrote the biggest song we ever had, and now he was free to go out and become the big star he should be. Wow, Peter's gone. It's the end of something. But the end of what? It was difficult to envision the band not being the four of us. Dysfunctional or not, we were the Four Musketeers. It was a scenario we had never contemplated. What if somebody no longer wanted to be there? What if somebody was no longer doing his job? Whatever tension there was inside the band, we had always remained a band. Then all of a sudden, one person was no longer part of the band. It shook all of us to the core. What do we do? Do we break up the band? The rules had changed. KISS clearly wasn't going to continue as it had.